Hello there everyone, welcome back to another video. This is going to be going up early on my Patreon page, so if you're seeing this on YouTube, please do check out that Patreon. You could have seen this before the Treasure Cup season, and it could have been very, very helpful and useful to you, so please do check that out if you're interested in seeing this kind of content much earlier in the future, potentially moving into the Championship season. Today, I'm going to be giving my in-depth, thorough breakdown of Eustass Captain Kid. I was very tempted to say useless Captain Mid there, but I can't slander him. The guy is incredible. So this video is going to be split up into different chunks. Firstly, I'm going to be talking about Kid's strengths. Then I'm going to be talking about Kid's weaknesses. Thirdly, I'm going to be talking about why I think Kid is incredibly difficult to play and why I think he's one of the highest skill cap, if not the highest skill cap leaders in the entire game. Then I'm going to be going over the list that I took to the Treasure Cup, and I'm going to be giving a very detailed analysis of every single card choice, much more than the relatively surface level one in my deck profile that's up on YouTube. And then I will be flashing over to my detailed matchups breakdown slides, the graphics. I call them graphics, that's being a bit generous to myself. I made them on PowerPoint, but you'll be able to see those there. And then finally, I'm going to be finishing up this video by discussing some general advice when it comes to tournament setting, and in particular One Piece tournaments. So firstly, let's start off with what are Kid's strengths. So I think the first thing to highlight is the leader effect. So I'm sure you're all well aware of this by now, but this says activate main once per turn, pay 3 Don, you may trash one card from your hand, set this leader as active. So the first strength of this leader is the fact that you always have 2 attacks on board. You always have basically a rush Zoro at bare minimum. You always have access to this by the nature of the leader effect. So this is an incredibly powerful effect because it lets you transform dead cards in your hand into either aggression or removal. And a good Kid player is gonna be able to, based on the information they have on the opponent's hand and based on the information they have about the opponent's field, is going to be able to know when they should be using that throughout the game. A bad Kid player is not going to use it at all throughout the game until the kill turn. And well, I say that might be a little bit harsh, but if you're only using this on a kill turn, you're not making full use of the leader ability. This is a phenomenally powerful leader skill, and you need to be making sure you're taking advantage of at least scaring your opponent that you might be about to use that restand and potentially forcing him to commit a second. Kid's other strengths. We'll start off with, I think, the most obvious strength, besides the leader effect, and that is 8-cost Kid. So this card absolutely ran the Japanese format when it first came out, and it ran the English format when it first came out as well. Since then, the format has, of course, adapted and evolved, and this card is nowhere near as oppressive as it once was, though the fact that it caused the format to warp to such an extent, in my opinion, makes it clear why I think it is the best card in the game, and I think that's a relatively uncontroversial thing. If you see 8-cost Kid as an opponent, it's often very demoralizing. Like, it's going to be something where you're like, oh shit, okay, I guess I'm losing this then. Even unless you have the instant out. And if you don't, it's a card that's surefire gonna win you the game as the Kid player. Obviously, this is such an oppressive card because it's basically turning your leader into an 8k body. Because when it's rested with a Don on it, suddenly they have to attack it. And it's very easy to defend something that's 8k, it turns out. Because your opponent's realistically only going to be able to attack it 2 or 3 times in a turn, at best. And then once you've protected it, you've got a few blockers, you can start hammering in and doing insane numbers of life damage. But that's not the only reason why Kid is good. Kid is good for a few other reasons, but I think the most important one is the fact that you're kind of playing 2 decks, right? Because you're actually also playing a Wano country deck, right? You're playing a Supernova deck and you're playing a Wano country deck, and it's the synthesis of these 2 archetypes that makes Kid so strong. Because you have access to your incredible removal in the form of your leader, in the form of your versatility in the form of your leader, I should say. And then you have access to your top end in cards like Eustass in 8-drop Kid, Basil Hawkins, Trafalgar Law, and of course 7-drop Kid. By having access to these incredibly powerful late game tools, you know if you can make it to the late game, if you can establish your board, very little in the game is going to come close to competing with this. So that's fine, you've got your late game. But what's really powerful is then you have your early game, and you have these control tools. You have ways to disrupt your opponent's board. You have ways to make sure you're removing pretty much anything in these cards. Of course, Izo as well. And it's that duality, the fact that you're essentially playing 2 decks at once, that makes Kid so incredibly strong. Now, that being said, Kid also does have weaknesses. One of the big weaknesses is the deck is outside of 8-cost Kid. It's not actually like that defensively crazy. it is very possible when you're building for things like the mirror match to get blown out by rush. Obviously, as you'll know, there's like a lot of cards in this list that do not have counter. And if you are not playing those counter cards, then sometimes you can just die. The other thing is, every decision in this deck is just difficult. Once you get beyond like that beginner tier level and you start playing like properly into good opponents, every single decision matters. Every single one, in terms of, oh, what counter do I discard here? Do I counter this? Do I protect this card? What cards do I need to remove on my opponent's board? When should I be going for life? When should I be going to control? When should I just not be swinging? Like, there are times when you just don't attack with leader. You just don't need to. Or you shouldn't. You're giving your opponent cards. You shouldn't be doing that. There are sometimes. These are all these little micro decisions that actually, you know, should I be using body? Should I be playing this? What should I be searching off body? What should my game plan be? All of these things add up to create a deck that is very, very complex. And because of its complexity, it actually ends up being the case where it's very difficult to pilot at a high level. On top of that, of course, another disadvantage is because the deck is so strong, you have to get very, very good, very, very confident into that mirror match. And if you're not confident into the mirror match, you're going to be having a bad time. So I think those are the big weaknesses. So what makes Kid so difficult to play? I think basically, what makes Kid difficult to play, I think, is kind of what makes the One Piece card game difficult to play. And I think this is something where, when you talk to top players, this is a very universally held opinion among top players. If you tell this take to someone who only tried One Piece for a bit, and maybe they're top in other games, but they didn't play it very long, they'll say, oh no, One Piece is really easy. You can tell they did not actually explore the game, because the game is tough. The game is really, really tough. Let me give you like some of the examples of questions you're going to be asking yourselves in every single One Piece game. What do I mulligan for? Should I be mulliganing this hand? Am I going first? Am I going second? That's going to change that decision. You know, how should I be interacting with my opponent's board state? Should I be fighting them to win this board in this situation? Should I be attempting to do something else? How the hell do I decide when to counter and what with? It's difficult to decide when I should be protecting characters and when I should be protecting my life, because your life is a resource, but it's also a resource that if you dig too greedily into it, can lead to your demise. It's difficult to play this deck if you open anything other than the ideal curve. So if you open ideal curve, yes, this deck is very, very, very easy to play. But if you do not open ideal curve, which, spoiler alert, is most of the time, suddenly you are in a very, very complex situation. And finally, it's difficult to understand at the end of the game exactly how you're going to be seeing that lethal. And sometimes you've got to be doing very unusual plays, staggering things out, taking things slower over a few more turns than just trying to do it in one turn. This is not red. You can't just Diablo Jambe, load up the plate, and swing 15, right? This is the thing where you don't actually... Oh, I swing 14, I guess. But these are not things you have access to. So these are all fundamental things where actually, like, basically, these are common to the entire One Piece card game. And that is what I think makes Kid so interesting, because being good at Kid is the same as being good at the One Piece card game. And that isn't necessarily true for other decks. I can see a Kaido player seeing a lot of success, and no disrespect to Kaido players, there are plenty of good Kaido players, but you can also understand how a deck with as high variance as that can have a very poor player just see incredible success because they happen to open the Onigashima, open the curve, open the queens, open the kings, open the Kaidos, and just see perfect curve every single day, every single game, and suddenly they're off on a runaway success. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good player. That isn't true for Kid. Once you get past those few rounds, those Kid players who are still doing well, they are gonna be good at the game. So, obviously, that is some of the reasons why the deck is so difficult. Basically, it's one of those things where it's just fundamentals. It's just fundamentals. So, one other thing I want to talk about as well before we really get into it, because this is kind of related to the advantages and the disadvantages, and one of the difficulties is talking about that mulligan. Because for Kid in particular, the mulligan is so difficult. I can talk about the mulligan in lore is kind of easy, right? It's like, oh, if you open like a Nami and a 5-cost lore, you're probably keeping that hand. If you open like a bunch of 1-drops and like something else, you're probably keeping that hand. If you open a bunch of 5 and 3-drops, you're probably mulliganing that hand, right? You're looking for combo pieces. It's quite an easy thing to decide. The same with Kaido, you're hard mulliganing for Onigashima. For Doflamingo, you're hard mulliganing for cards like Perona, for cards like your 3-cost Doflamingo. So these are decks where it's relatively easy to decide the mulligan. This is not the case with Kid. The first thing to understand is your curves going first versus going second are very different. So understand, right? If you are going, if you're going first as Kid, you have one of the most disgusting curves in the game, right? If this is the curve you see going first as Kid, this is what I was talking about, where it's basically impossible to lose. If you see this, like if you go turn 1 Beige, turn 2 Okiku, turn 3 Hawkins, turn 4 Kid, and you don't attack with a single one, your opponent doesn't instantly jet pistol it. You can take however much life you want, it doesn't matter. Once you have all these on board, that's it. That's it. Your opponent is not doing shit because you are running the game now. And obviously, for good measure, you can throw down this as well. If you want your perfect curve, why not? Right? Yeah, sure. But this is the kind of curve you have access to going first. Going second is very different, because now you have access to a completely different curve. Potentially something very strong is Beige backed up by like a Bonnie or something. You have access to a search on the next turn where you can block when your opponent swings into it and force them to swing with one of their characters on board, which usually is going to be something cheap, so something you can remove with your leader, and you're going to be able to trade for board that way. Then on turn 2, potentially you've got Okiku, you've got searches you can do, and of course you've got things like this. The main strength of going second in Kid, however, is the fact that you can play 8-cost Kid on curve. And you don't have to rest it, you don't have to use it, you just play it. It's a big body, it's a threat, it's not easy to out. It's something your opponent's going to see and then they go, well shit. Because on the next turn, at 10 Don, you can swing with it and then suddenly load up 2, 3, 4 blockers, and your opponent is going to be like, well shit, how am I dealing with this? Because you're playing this on curve. It's very, very, very difficult to deal with. And, you know, that's something where it's, you know, it's very, very scary. You know, if you consider the kind of boards that you're able to build with this, if you've got an 8-cost Kid backed up by, like, a single Hawkins and a Killer with a Don card underneath it, which is in my deck box, but so I'll grab that. But, like, yeah, if you've got something like this as your board, going into your opponent's turn, like this is insane, because this is like, okay, yeah, you can load up the plate as much as you want. I'm drawing a card, I'm blocking your attack, and then I'm protecting this. Obviously this is rested with a Don underneath it. And then you've got Basil Hawkins, who you can aggressively swing with, clear boards and go face, and you don't care that he's rested now because you've got an 8-cost Kid backing up. This board is game winning on its own, and this is the kind of board you have access to going second as Kid. It's much easier to get a board like this going second than it is going first. So either way, like, you have advantages, but as a result, it can be very difficult to know. But you'll notice, like, they're not easy mulligan targets, right? It's not like you're going, oh yeah, let me mulligan for like the specific combination of a few cards. You kind of have to understand the different matchups, and then what cards you need to see into those matchups to make those kind of changes. Obviously, you know, you can play the strategy as simply take life, wall up as 8-cost Kid, and, you know, Ooga Booga, but that's not gonna win you the game into good players into other matchups. So the next thing I want to talk about is So, okay, we talked about why Kid is so difficult to play. Let's talk about the detailed analysis of the card choices. So, obviously, if you see my deck profile, you'll know most of these. So, we'll just go through simply, and we'll start off at the top end. So, I think 8-cost Kid, as I've said, this card really runs the format, because this is a singularly oppressive card. This card, when it hits the board, changes the game state. Because now at 8k, you're backing them up with blockers, your opponent needs to put heavy Don investment into being able to deal with this card, and even if they do deal with this card, you have sat there with your, you're probably, you know, I don't know, 2 life, 1 life when you play it. They've had to invest their whole turn into dealing with this. It's very unlikely they're going to be able to deal with this last 2 life. And if this lasts more than a single turn, your opponent is going to be on 1 or on 0. You are just going to have to be able to kill them with your leader effect. So that was the way this deck worked initially. You just walled up with 8-cost Kid, and you sat there and you kept bashing down your opponent until they were at 0, and then when this card died, you didn't give a shit because you loaded up 7 Dons onto Kid, and you went 12, and you went 12, and you won the game. And that doesn't work against everything anymore. It still can work against Kaido, but against everything else, it doesn't really work. So that's something to consider. But of course, you know, this is an incredibly important card. Right, let's talk about next 7-cost Kid. And I talked about this a bit in the initial deck profile, but this card is absolutely ridiculous for a few reasons. So the first thing you need to understand is that this card is one where when you read it initially, so it reads powerfully, right? So this is it's a blocker, and then it has the effect where Don 1 at the end of the turn. you can set this card as active. So this is a card where you swing with it for 8 and then you get it back. And that is insane, right? The fact that you're just getting this free 8k attack, your opponent can never clear. Your opponent cannot deal with it, and then it gets the block as well. So if your opponent just swings 6 into you, you get greedy, you go, yeah, sure. And it stops an attack. And yes, they can then swing 7, a huge amount into this, but then you're like, okay, your whole turn was just dealing with this one card. That was it, this one card. That's probably worth it. That's probably worth it for you as a player. But there are other reasons that you want to play this card. A good number of them. So the first one, I think, is let's understand why this card is so powerful into different matchups. So against, for example, red, they need to Otama Jet Pistol this card. That's the or Gordon Jet Pistol or Round Table Robin or Round Table Jet Pistol. Like, the point is they need to reduce its power and then they need to pop it. And that is very difficult. Now, of course, they can reduce its power and then reduce its effectiveness as a blocker. But if they do that, they're not doing that to this card. And they need to do that to this card. Because if they don't instantly have a way to reduce this card's power or just pop it, they're going to have a very, very bad time. So this is kind of acting as like a bait for to protect your 8-cost kid. And of course, if they do just reduce the power of the 8-cost kid and you've got both on the board, then that's fine, because you can just go, okay, yeah, sick, I'm blocking and I'm still taking one attack away and it's not going to be anywhere near sufficient. So this is insanely powerful into that red matchup. This is bad into blue. They're just going to bounce it or bot deck it. So I will say, obviously, into blue this is bad, but blue literally cannot beat this card. So if blue literally cannot beat this card, then you don't care about this card being bad into it, because all you do is find this card and you win the game. Now, the crazy thing about this card is into purple and into green. I'll talk about purple very briefly, because I'm going to talk about that more when we go over the matchup. But essentially, the reason this card is so good is because you play this either on curve or on turn 5, and then you swing 7 with leader, and then you've got an 8k attacker or a 9k attacker every single turn after that. And this is a card where purple cannot instantly deal with it. They do not have the facilities to deal with the 7 cost. They can deal with 6 or below, they can deal with 5 or below very easily. They cannot deal with the 7 cost or below. So this is stopping an attack from your opponent at bare minimum. It's also swinging 8, 9 every single turn. 9, 9, 9, 9, 9 with 2 dons, which is insane. And they can't instantly pop it, which means because you need to be rushing purple down, you need to get them to 1 before they can 10 cost card you. Because if they 10 cost card you at 1, you win the game guaranteed, because you load up the plate onto kid and you go 12-12. And this is something that's really helping you do that. Oh, there goes the wire. Let's try to get that out of the shot. Oh my god. Anyway, sorry. And then into and the reason this card is absolutely crazy into green is because green has no efficient way of dealing with this card at all. Like, literally none. They cannot deal with it. They cannot deal with this card, because if you think about what green's card pool does, right? It rests Okiku, that is the best thing you've got, and it rests like a 5 cost or lower. I'm really sorry about this. it rests like a 5 cost or lower. That is not what 7 cost kid is. 7 cost kid is not something that you can rest with an Okiku very easily. So, okay, what else can we deal with? Well, nothing, you know. Straw Sword. Straw Sword is the only card that can interact with this. And even if you Straw Sword it, if I'm trying to remove it, I still have to swing a huge amount into it. So this is a card into green they cannot deal with, which means it's something you are always going to have. So if you play this on curve in the green mirror and your opponent does not instantly match it, you have an 8 or 9k swing every single turn. Every single turn. 1 don. The cheapest thing in the game. You go boom, 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 8, 8, 8, 8. This is insane. And you know what 8k also is? It's enough to hit over kid. So you literally have this free attack every single turn. You're going, give me a card from your hand. 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 It's so strong. This is an essential tool in playing the rematch. Okay, so I've said a lot about that. Now, the other essential tool is Basil Hawkins. This card is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's it's difficult to talk about Basil Hawkins without like getting a bit too gassed about how insanely ridiculous this card is. But like, when I tell you this card literally runs the matchup, like, it untaps, right? So Don 1, when it attacks, if it bows opponent's character, you set this card as active. So you put 1 Don on it and you swing into a character, it untaps. So every single turn, you have a free attack, and your opponent cannot interact with it. They have to hard remove it. The other option is, of course, you go swing, swing, and you've gotten double value out of it. And then what you can do is your opponent swings into it, and you just Paradise Waterfall. It's back untapped. They wasted resources going into this. It's a 6k body, so to make sure this doesn't instantly kill it, they need to swing 8. And what you can do is if you can Paradise Waterfall, and if you've got a chump blocker like a beige, You can block with Beige, Paralyzed Waterfall, untap this, that's it, it's done. You're back. Obviously, that doesn't always feel amazing, because then you can go, oh, why don't you just Beige it, and then like wait and see if they swing again, and arguably that's better, but the point is it's an option. Mainly, it's when if they swing into this with like 7, this is insanely high value, which is why I say Paralyzed Waterfall is better into worse players, because the better player is going to go, okay, well, I'm going to at least force the blocker by swinging with more than 2k, but again, you can just Paralyzed Waterfall and then chuck a 1k, I don't know, a Neko or something, and that's also really, really good. So these are options you have. So that's one of the reasons why Hawkins is insane, is giving you that value. It's also insane because it's giving you value on your kill turns, because on your kill turns, you go, okay, well, you have a blocker and you have no life, so I'm just going to swing 7. Give me 2 cards from your hand right now, or you die. It's literally a check, like, okay, 2 cards. And then those 2 cards are gone. And you always know, with 1 Don on Hawkins, you can slap 6 Dons onto Kid, who's going to be swinging 11, and you go 11, 11. Yeah, you block 1, and then you're like, okay, 11. Have you got enough? Have you got bloody 4 cards in hand to deal with this? No, they probably don't. They probably just lose. So yeah, this Hawkins is so important. Of course, he doesn't have counter. If he had counter, I think Kid would be tier 0 probably. Like if Hawkins had counter, so I'm glad he doesn't. But yeah, Hawkins is absolutely ridiculous. So that's why we play Hawkins. Law. Law is a card where I think some people get very, very gassed about it, and they play him had a large count, and I think he's really, really good with Paralyzed Waterfall, right? Because you can, if your opponent swings 7, you can block with Law, Paralyzed Waterfall, untap Law. So this is like having a 3k counter for 1. So obviously that's really, really nice. Don't get me wrong. But the other utility of this card, and I think the more important utility, is the biggest combination you'll see early game, right? So basically, if you play an Okiku, which I'm trying to find there, if you play an Okiku on curve, this is the second biggest Jet Pistol Magnet in your deck. This is the biggest, but this is the biggest rest and get cleared over target. Everyone is going to go, oh, Okiku, I want to rest it and I want to clear it. I want to bounce it. They want to deal with this card. So if they do, so usually what you want to be doing instead is you would like to play 2 threats at once, right? You'd like to play like 2 of these 3 cards at the same time, so your opponent is like, shit, I can only deal with one of them. And what card lets you do that? Trafalgar Law lets you deal with that. Why? Because what you do is, on your second turn, you play Nekomamushi, you rest one of their things, and you clear it with your leader effect. You go, okay, with your leader, you go, okay, yeah, swing 6 into whatever I just cleared. Then you got Nekomamushi on board, that's it, fine, whatever. Your opponent does their turn. On your next turn, you just go swing 5 leader, and then you go play Law, bounce Neko, play Izo. You got your Nekomamushi back. You have a rester back in your hand to do whatever you want. You just developed an Okiku on board at the same time as a Law. So if your opponent rests this and tries to clear it, you've got a Law blocker fundamentally that you can stop one attack with, and it's much easier to block that attack. So you don't have to heavily commit into Okiku. Your opponent's probably not going to be able to instantly deal with that if you're playing on curve. And you got a 1k counter in your hand as well. So this is an insanely powerful play. That alone justifies playing Law. Law does God's work sometimes when you're doing that. Of course, it's another brick in the deck, and that's a very strong reason to potentially cut it. However, I really like this card at 2. I don't think I would drop this card below 2, because just having access to that tool, having a 6k blocker as well is really nice. Just another thing to back up your 8 cost Kid is really, really, really good. So that's why we play Law. X-Drake, as I said, this card is fine. It's better than the Killer because it's a 6k body. And that really matters when you're trying to play into something like Kaido, where you just have to develop a couple of big bodies on the board to incentivize them to try and clear you, right? Because you've got to develop at least some of these. Obviously, 5 costs are worse because they can play the 9 cost Rush Kaido and just pop it. But this is a 6, so you slap 1 Don underneath it and you go 7. And you're forcing 2 cards out or a blocker. And that's really, really nice, because then you can load up your leader and go boom, boom, which is obviously really, really sick. This also deals with the blue matchup very nicely, because what does Doffy do? It plays all their cards at rest. So you just go, all right, sick, yeah, play this, pop that. You can also, so the other thing to understand about this card is it's like it has Rush. And you're probably thinking, what the hell are you talking about? So basically, what you can do is, let's say you're in the mirror match. I'm using the mirror match as an example here because you're going to be playing all the time. You play down your Okiku, okay? So your opponent has an Okiku. So let's say you play Neko. You rest the Okiku. So here's what you do. You just go, okay, swing 5. And your opponent's going to go, well, I'm definitely going to guard that. So you take a card out of their hand. And then you're like, okay, so that's a card out of your hand gone. Boom. Pop. Gone. Obviously, it's exactly the same if you didn't have to play the Neko and your opponent just swung with this. So what just happened there? You've removed a card from your opponent's hand for no reason, right? Because what a bad player might have done is gone, okay, swing face so it is instead not played these. Your opponent's got arrested thing, they go, oh yeah, swing 5 leader, and your opponent's going to go, yeah, sure, I'll take that. So they've got an extra card in their hand, because this telegraphs that you're about to pop it, right? Why are they not attacking this incredibly high value target? Oh, because they probably are about to pop it. So let me just take that card so I have another card to deal with whatever they're going to do. Instead, you attack into this, your opponent thinks, interesting. He's probably got like, instead, he's got a Hawkins he's going to want to play. So he's just trying to see if I've got any counters in hand to deal with this. So they take a card out of your hand. You might take a 2k out, potentially, depending on their hand. And then you slam this down and you pop it. And that is very demoralizing. It's something where like they feel like, oh, I just literally neg 2 for no reason. So that is an insane combo. That's one of the reasons why this card is really good. It's also obviously very good into just dealing with your opponent's attackers. If they play a Rush Zoro or something, you just go, yeah, sick, pop, 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 and you're developing a 6k body, which you can use to continue to clear board or threaten life. So this is an incredibly good card as well. Why do I play Raizo? This card in the mirror match is insane. Why? Because you want to be having Raizo down when you've got 8-cost kid out. Because what happens is you have these 2 cards. Obviously you have blockers as well, but you have these 2 cards. Put a Don onto kid, you go swing 9. Put a Don to Raizo, you go swing 5, draw. Swing 5, draw. Draw, 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 draw. And every single card you have in your hand to back up an 8-cost kid, imagine, basically, the way to think about it is 8-cost kid is like your leader is 8k. So that means a 1k counter is like being a 4k counter, right? Compared to normal circumstances. So this says, add a 4k counter to your hand in this situation, which is nuts. The other thing is, it of course can potentially dig you into your things like blockers, which are even more valuable in the situation because your opponent is going to play a huge amount of stuff and you go, yeah, cool, block, right? So this is insane. In this particular circumstance. The other nice thing about this card is it's good into things like red, where they're playing lots of little things and they're swinging with them, into like Rush Zoro, 2-drop Rush Zoro. Their 2-drops are 4k, so you don't even have to put a Don onto Raizo. You can just swing 4 and get your draw anyway. So this is a really, really nice card into those red matchups. And it's 4k, so it doesn't get popped by things like Robin, so it's like a safe play. So that's like one of the reasons the card is nice, but I don't think it's anything crazy broken, and certainly I probably wouldn't have bothered playing it if I knew I was only going to be playing 4 Kid Mirrors at the Treasure Cup, but yeah, I think it's a really, really nice option. Okiku, I don't know how much we can talk about Okiku, man. This card is, I feel like we all know that this is insane. The big combo is, of course, if you have this with one of these 2, because you can because you have this card, you swing with it and you rest something, and then that's a free clear with Hawkins, or you clear it with your leader and then you bounce this and you play this. So your opponent can't deal with this. This card is resting 5 or lower. That's basically everything relevant. The only stuff is the insanely huge things. So and this is a 3 cost. This is a 3 cost and it's dealing with 5s. So if you're playing this on curve, you're dealing with whatever your opponent's playing. You're dealing with their important threats. You can rest blockers. This is the big thing. You swing with this, you rest the blocker, and suddenly your opponent's like, well, shit, then, alright. And they're just screwed because this potentially just secures lethals. Your opponent's like chump blockers are suddenly doing nothing. This rests laws, so you can deal with laws in the law matchup, because obviously they want to be blocking with their 6Ks and things. Yeah, this is absolutely insane. Obviously the combos of the Hawkins is nuts as well, and you can always restand it when your opponent swings 6 into it with Paralyzed Waterfall. You have that option as well. I don't think I can talk about Okiku anymore. This is just ridiculous. And that one's a very obvious one. Izo, of course, this is a 2k counter. This is the big reason we're playing this card, but the fact it rests a 4 cost or lower is also very relevant because particularly, so obviously blue plays a lot of these 4 cost blockers, so being able to just rest those when you stand this down is really good. But there's also a card you can just play to deal with those blockers, to deal with cards early game. Dude, like in the law matchup, for example, I don't care. I'm going to be like, yeah, sure, fucking, I'll play this to just deal with your thing. So this card is absolutely ridiculous, just so good. And yeah, I think, and it's the same reason Nekomamushi is so good. I'm conscious I've been talking for so long about this that maybe you don't want to listen to me talk for quite that long. But yeah, that's why Neko is so good as well. I'm not only playing 3 copies, obviously the whole deck is like messed up now. But anyway, I'm not only playing 3 copies, right? But this card is amazing because it's developing a 3k body. What does that mean? 3k is swinging into almost anything small in the format and just clearing it. So you're just going clear, 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 clear. So you're getting an attacker on board. You can bounce it back with law, so you're getting it back into your hand. And this is removing chump blockers. And you know what? This rests 3 characters. This is 3 or less. So this is resting Robins. This is resting Okikus. This is resting targets you want to be dealing with that you can don up your leader and swing into them. This card is a ridiculous control tool. If you're playing less than 4, you absolutely can. Of course, we need our killers. This card is ridiculous because I said you have a Don under it, and you draw a card. Now let me tell you about one really cute little interaction that's absolutely crazy. So let's say you've got this situation, which is not an unreasonable situation, which is you have, let's say you got something like this. I don't know. So you got something like this, and you've got a Don card underneath your killer, and you've resolved both of these searches on the previous turn. And your opponent is playing like a red, for example. So let's say these are both Namis. So your opponent's going to see this and be like, oh, okay, sick. I'm going to clear both of these cards. So they go, okay, cool. Let's swing into Momo. You go, okay, cool. Block, resolve your draw first, so you get a card in your hand, and then you can just go Paradise Waterfall. Oh shit, his block is still alive, and he's getting it again. This isn't once per turn. So now they go, okay, swing into Momo. You go, sure, block, draw another card, and then this dies. So what you've basically done there is you've just turned these two attacks into nothing. They're going to have to swing with leader or something to clear this. So you've nullified 3 attacks with basically 1 blocker and 1 card from hand, but you've +2'd from the cards in hand. So you've lost nothing in terms of card advantage to deal with 3 attacks on your opponent's board, and you still have your Bonnie or your Momo, whichever one they chose to leave alive, to plus you on the next turn, which is a ridiculous interaction, which hasn't come up yet for me in the tournament, but it's come up in testing, and I'm like, oh damn, that's crazy, you can do that. So this is something that's absolutely nuts that you have access to with killers. Of course, then the really boring stuff. 4 Apu, it's 2k that's searchable. You're playing 4 of each of your searches. You need these. You need both of these because you need to be able to find your Wano cards in certain matchups, and you need to be able to find your Supernova cards in other ones. That's like, as I was saying, the strength of the deck. The fact that you're basically playing 2 decks together is what is part of the reason it makes it so good. And of course, your beiges. And finally, we'll talk about the events. Obviously, I've been talking about Paradise Waterfall in the context of all these other cards because it's so good, right? Because the one other interaction I don't think I've talked about is if you have, like, let's say you got a Hawkins, or you've got a Raizo, or anything, you got anything, and you go swing, whatever. So now it's just sitting here, and your opponent sees this, and they go, okay, I want to clear this card. If they put 2 Dons and they swing into it, you just go Waterfall, and now you can't clear it, and now you've dodged and you've blocked an attack, and it's like having like this bigger thing here. The other reason this is like it's a 9k counter with this card. It's an 8. It's putting you up to 8k with this card. It's nice here because usually if they see a Raizo rested, they're just going to swing into it with leader. They're not going to commit a Don, and that is so punishing because you go Waterfall. Thanks for giving me like a load of advantage for that trade. Just nuts. Waterfall is such a powerful card. It really is very powerful. And of course, the trigger. Sometimes you'll just see it and you go, oh yeah, sick, pop your Kiku. Sometimes that just happens and you're like, okay, cool. I guess I lose then. And then finally, Straw Sword is just my little tech I like. As I said in my deck profile, I like if I see it, cool. I'm usually going to get value out of it by resting a very high value target and just dealing with it. If I don't see it, it's not the end of the world, and I can always choose it if I'm doing a Bonnie top search. So that is the in-depth analysis of the card choices. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to go over to my slides, and I'm going to give my matchups breakdown of each of the big matchups you need to be worrying about with this deck, and then we'll close out with some advice on tournaments. Okay, so I've taken my camera off so you can see the entirety of this graphic. So what this is it is a picture of the matchup you're playing into. So you can see that with the leader card. And then I have the mulligan targets in all of these cards here. Then below that I have color-coded how the matchup is going to go. I have whether you want to go first or second, and then I have an explanation of the matchup. So let's go ahead and talk about this. So against Red Luffy, you want to be mulliganing for your Wano cards and things like Law and Hawkins. And particular, like if you see something like Okiku Law, that is really good. That is an indication that you're probably going to win it. This matchup is slightly disadvantageous. Monkey D. Luffy is the one leader in the game outside of Law, but it's easier to. Well, I don't know if that's true actually. Basically, Luffy and Law are the only leaders in the game where, like, if you see them, you should be a bit scared because they can really outplay you. Like they can just deal with it. So you want to be going first into this matchup, and the logic behind that is essentially you've kind of got to be aggressive. You can't play like the long control game because honestly, Luffy is able to put up such ridiculous numbers. Like because it's just attaching extra Dons. If they have like even a 1/1 drop Nami as well, so they're getting 2 free Dons. Suddenly, like all their numbers that you're trying to do your maths for are actually significantly higher, 1 or 2k higher, and your cards in your hand are suddenly worth a lot less. So, as I say here, you don't want to play a 5-cost character or even a 3-cost character that can be dealt with by only with one jet pistol. So as I was talking about earlier, one of the reasons Law is so valuable is because you can play a Neko on the previous turn, clear one of your opponents, like their 1-cost Namis, the one that kicked on, which is a card you want to deal with. It's going to give them so much value throughout the game. And then on the next turn, they're never dealing with the Neko, so you go, cool, play Law, bounce, play Okiku. Now, they cannot pistol, because... Well, they can pistol, but they're only going to deal with one of the cards. And then, whichever one you keep, you're going to be happy. The value of Paradise Waterfall is obviously higher because it's likely your opponent is going to try and go for a rested character and ignore your blockers, but you must be aggressive as well because they are going to kill you very quickly. Because Luffy is a really aggressive deck, you need to be trading life with them. You can't be in this situation where you're scared, like, oh, they got loads of cards in hand. Frankly, Luffy does not have that much defense and has got a lot of bricks. You know, it's like, you know, they might have a 6-card hand. That 6-card hand might only have 3k counter. So you gotta understand that and be willing to take those risks and be aggressive, because otherwise Luffy will just blow you out. Basil Hawkins is the #1 pistol target, because if they ever let Hawkins live, they know they're dead, because you're just going to clear their board every single turn and also get free attacks on face in combination with Waterfall. Or you don't even need to do that. You can just, like, you know, swing into something and then swing face, and then just not swing face. But I do think swinging face with Basil as a result is really, really nice. And then Waterfall value is very, very high, because then they swing 7 into it, you restand it. Often, you're basically going to be in this situation of, if you have the pistol, you win. And that is just the way it is with Red, in particular with Luffy. Sometimes if you have to be like, okay, if you've got it, you've got it. But a lot of the time, they're not going to have it. And by putting yourselves in those situations, you're forcing your opponent to basically be like, well, shit then, I guess I concede. And if they don't, then you win, which is really, really nice. Then we got Red Zoro. I think this is a much easier matchup. The reason for that is because... basically, you have plenty of ways of defending Zoro 6k swings early game, and you have so much resting, you have so much removal. You have Neko, Izo, Okiku, obviously that Law combo, X-Drake, and then of course you've got your big kids, which they're never going to be able to just... so rarely will they have the Otama pistol to do it, that it's just not worth talking about. So yeah, you want to be going second, because in this matchup, you want to be denying your opponent card advantage. You want to just be going board. You only go board, and you guard attacks as much as you can, and you stay at 2 life at the lowest. If you go below 2, you're in the danger zone. But if you can clear your opponent's board, put them in the situation where they're basically they don't have a board, the only attacks they have is their leader attack and then rushes, you are going to be able to survive. You have stabilized, and then you can just punch face over 2 turns and just kill them, because they have no defense whatsoever. So yeah, you're not careful, you're going to get blown out. Keep trying to win, even if it's a hard win. You might be in the situation where you're at 0 life and your opponent's at like 1 life and they've got a fat hand. You might still win. Don't give up. You protect your life in the beginning of the game. You have to be defending, because otherwise you're going to go to 2 low life and your opponent's going to Diablo Jambe or 5-cost Luffy or Shanks you, and then you lose. Kid is a blocker that's weak against a whiteboard, but it's very powerful when used in combination with Waterfall. As we said, you know, you're going to be able to restand. You're getting that 9k blocker, and you're getting 2 attacks blocked out of it, so it's very, very high value. And in the early stages of the game, you want to be protecting your life with counters and use 1-0 cards to reduce attacks in the mid game, and then you finish the game with your aggressive kids in the end game when your opponent doesn't have the resources to stop you. I think this is a pretty easy matchup, as long as the opponent isn't just seeing the absolute nuts. Forcing them to go first is really, really helpful as well, because it gives you an extra card, which is really, really, really nice, and it's denying them that card advantage that's so important. I think this is a pretty easy matchup. I would have been happy to play this a lot more with the Treasure Cup. Law, this one's tough. So you want to be mulliganing for 1-0 plus Law plus X-Drake. Is really rough. This depends on the opponent's skill. You always go second. Always go second, because you need to stop them from getting that leader effect off. You have to deny them cards. They start on 4 life, okay? Do not give them extra card. They're already low on card advantage because they start on 4 life. They can't just take a random hit. So do not let them do it. You play cards, basically, you want to be looking at your opponent's hand and field, and you always want that number to be 5 or less. Always 5 or less. And frankly, if you can have it as 3, that's better. And your play is very, very simple. You always attack characters. When I was playing the one Law matchup I played on day 2 in the side event, I didn't swing with my leader for into life until the turn before I killed him, because then his board was gone and I was like, cool, now I'm going to kill you. because you can kill Law over 2 turns really easily once you've dealt with the board. So do not give them cards. Do not give them cards. You go play Arrestor, swing into that thing. Commit, don up, whatever you've got to do to make sure that character dies. Keep killing those characters. The Law requires, they need to take a couple of cards of damage just so they can potentially unbrick if they don't see pluses off their searches, if they don't, you know, see crazy cards, if you are able to prevent them from resolving that Law skill, the deck does nothing. Of course, against a skilled opponent, they are going to know to conserve certain things. They're going to know that, you know, it's kind of awkward, right? Because they might just choose not to play anything, and then once they're at 8 or 10 Don, they can just spam out a board, depending on what they've kept, and then suddenly, bang, and you're punished. You know, if they're choosing very carefully what they're letting die. But yeah, it's possible to build Law to a very hard counter kid. So one of my friends did that, and it was dire every time we played it, because it's basically very difficult to beat unless the Law player bricks. So against a very good Law player, it's uphill. It's very uphill. It's winnable, but it's very uphill. Against a bad Law player, you're going to clap them. So that's the thing. This one is very player skill dependent. Doffy, this is free as long as you don't brick, basically. As long as you see your 8-cost kid, you can't lose. You go second and take as much damage as you need to keep digging for kid. You can go down to 0. It's fine. The second you establish the 8-cost kid, is over for them, unless they literally need to go. They need to curve Virgo into 7-drop Doffy into 9-drop Mihawk. That's the only possible way they are going to be able to contest this 8-cost kid. But if you have just been taking damage whenever they've swung 7 in face to use their leader effect, then you're vibing, because you're going to have like a hand of 10 plus. You're going to have your 8-cost kid, you're going to have blockers established, and you're just going to go face, 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 face. Ignore their board. You don't care about their board. You go face, 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 face. It literally, you need 8-cost kid. If you do not see 8-cost kid, Doffy sweeps this matchup. You have to see 8-cost kid. And you always want to maintain a large hand. Do not use leader effect until you have to, because you need to defend this kid. If this kid goes, you're fucked, because then they're going to be swinging wide. So you gotta save your kid. Do not play 7-cost kid, because they're just going to bounce it, they're just going to bot deck it. Unless they have like 1 or 2 cards in hand, then it's fine. Because the odds of them having one of those bot deck cards is very low. And even if they do have it, if you've already got an 8-cost kid established, you're okay with it, because essentially you ended their turn. They're not going to get any swings into your 8-cost kid. You're fine with that. Next, Kaido. Okay, so you want to see a big card. You're mulliganing for 8 or 7-cost kid. If you see any 5-cost like a Hawkins, that's also fine, but you just mulligan hard for these 2 cards. You're generally in your favor, and you want to go first. And basically, the logic behind this matchup is, if Kaido sees everything, you can't win anyway. So you have to assume they're not going to see everything, and do everything you can to just kill them. So what do you do that? You don't play any characters besides early game. They're going to get removed. They're going to get Who's Who'd, or they're going to get 6-cost King'd, or something's going to happen, they're just going to remove. Use every single Don. Every single one as, well, obviously you can play blockers, but even then you might not want to. Use every single Don as attack power, and you just punch your opponent in the face. So turn 1, you pass. Turn 2, you go 5, to pay 3, discard a card without counter, swing 5. Turn 3, you go 7, 7. Turn 4, you go 9, 9. Turn 5, you can go 11, 11. Obviously you want to be going first, so you're getting those first attacks. Your opponent, even if they're playing, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 blockers, that's a lot of aggression. They're not going to be able to keep up with it. They need to open very, 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 very well to be able to potentially keep up with it. Lots of blockers, lots of 2k counters in hand, and you want to rush them down to 1. And you want to rush them down to 1 whilst simultaneously developing one of 7-cost kid or 8-cost kid. Ideally 8-cost kid, because basically then you put them, well, ideally 7-cost kid because you play it out on curve, but either one is fine. Because once you get once you have them at 1 and you slam down the 8-cost kid, you're like, okay, here's the situation. You cannot win here unless you 10-cost Kaido. But if you 10-cost Kaido, you lose, because you're going to be on 1 with no hand, and I'm going 12-12. And yeah, maybe the Kaido player has the 4 2k counters in hand they need to survive a 12k swing. If they do, they saw the nuts, and there's nothing you can do. You might still win, because it might be the case that you're at 2 life or 3 life, and then you're like, okay, that's fine, I'll survive your next turn, it's okay, because they might only have 2 attacks anyway. But, you know, there's nothing you can do in those situations. It is what it is. But you know, if the Kaido player doesn't basically see crazy, you should be winning this matchup by doing this aggressive strategy. Finally, the mirror match. The most important card is Hawkins. You need to see Hawkins. 7-cost kid as well, but Hawkins is essential. This is skill and hand dependent. I think you should be going first here, and the reason is you have the initiative. And by having the initiative, you're establishing your Akiku first, you're establishing your Hawkins first, you're establishing your Kid first. You're forcing your opponent to be reactive, to respond to you, to have to deal with your threats, whereas you can just see what your opponent does and do value. Just do whatever you want. And you're really forcing your opponent to have answers. Obviously, this is very winnable going second as well. It is very much skill dependent, and it's, if you've built for the mirror, you should be winning the mirror. If your opponent plays like 1 or 2 Hawkins, doesn't play 7-cost Kid, you're steamrolling them because these are incredibly valuable cards in the mirror match. As I said, Kid has no easy way to out 7-cost Kid, and the first player to play is usually an advantage. You're only playing 5 and 7-cost on curve. Those are the 2 big ones. If you miss Akiku, it's not the end of the world, but you want to be playing a 5 and a 7 on curve. And use counters early because later, like within reason, obviously if you need to take life to potentially fix your hand, then do that. But I'd try not to go below 3 before like those 10 don, before you hit 10 don, because if you go below 3, your opponent can just go like 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, and you kind of can't really deal with that. You might just lose. So there we go. That is my breakdowns of all the relevant matchups of the format. We're going to cut over to the camera, and now I'm going to give you my final thoughts on tournaments. Hey, it's me. Okay, so the final thing I want to say with just some general tournament stuff, and this is a very long video. I appreciate this is something like an hour long. So I hope this has been worth it. I hope this is worth the £5 you paid for my Patreon, or you've waited for me to put this up on YouTube. So fundamentally, One Piece is a best of 1 game. There's 2 things. One Piece is the best of 1 game, and One Piece is a game where at the top levels there is a lot of luck. And if you talk to anyone who won an event, or who came top 4, who came top 8, they're going to say, yeah, look, I played well today. That's true. I certainly wouldn't want to imply that anyone who got a top didn't play well. You have to play well. That's a prerequisite. You need to play well. On top of that, you need to be lucky. Why? 2 reasons. 1, as I just said, One Piece is a best of 1 game. You need to not brick. That's the first thing. In a best of 3 game, you can brick 1 game, it's fine. If your deck is better, you should be winning. If you're a better player, doesn't matter. 1 game, whatever. You can win 2 more. So it's a best of 1 game for that reason. And also, it's a best of 1 game. Your opponent might just see crazy and blow you out. And there's nothing you can do. So these are the 2 situations where One Piece being a best of 1 game fucks you, because there's nothing you can do. You can't get the clap back. You can't show you're like a better player. You can't just run it back. No, you just take it out. And of course, you need to be lucky as a result. So you need to be lucky in the sense that your opponent doesn't open something crazy and you don't brick best of 1 format and all that sort of stuff. But even in the best of 3 part, the problem is, well, because at the top level, if everyone is playing equally well, if the matchups are understood, are you seeing your cards? Are you seeing your cards at the end of the day, right? Because if you're not, like, I might be, I'm not saying I am, but let's say I was the best Kid player in the world, I'm going to lose the Kid mirror if I don't see my 7-cost Kid, if I don't see my Hawkins, if I don't see my top end. If I just see 1 O country card the whole game, that's all I see, I can't win that match, right? That just comes down to it. And I know that's something like bricking, but like, it matters, because you can see suboptimal against a worse player and probably still win. You cannot see suboptimal against a good player and still win, because they're going to have seen the better cards. So that's the one thing you gotta basically be at peace with, right? Going into the Treasure Cup, I was like, look, I think I am a good enough player to top. I was very confident in my ability. I was like, look, I'm a good player at this game. I think I can top. However, you need to go X1 to guarantee top. So you can only get blown out once. And just mathematically speaking, I did the maths. I was like, I'm probably going to go X2. I'm probably going to see bad luck twice. I'm going to go X2. And what happened? I went X2. So, like, it just happens. And if those losses had been later, I would have still topped. But, like, you know, it is what it is. So you've got to go in understanding this is the best of 1 game. There is some luck element to it. And if you grind out enough tournaments, that luck will standardize and you will see success, right? Once you get your skill level up to that, like, you're good at the game, just grind tournaments. Just grind tournaments and you're going to be fine. Obviously, you need experience as well. Once I've been playing TCGs for 10 years, right? Like when you've gone to Worlds and stuff, the pressure doesn't get to you. You're not sitting there going like, oh damn, what am I gonna do? Like, oh, I'm sweating. Like, oh, blah, blah. Yes, of course, you get in the game, you get invested. It's stressful, but the pressure doesn't make you misplay. You're not sitting there going, oh, I can't lose this game. I can't lose this game. I can't lose this game. Everyone's susceptible to that, even the most experienced player. But the difference is that experience helps you keep your cool. So if you're going to a tournament and you just fumble the bag horrendously, you panic and you do something really bad, don't worry. It happens to us all. When I was younger, when I was doing this for the first time, it happens to me all the time. You just fumble the bag. It's okay. You're gonna get better. You're gonna be able to deal with these stressful situations in a better way. And don't get tilted. If you get blown out, I got blown out round 2. I was like, well, shit then. I guess my day's over. But I kept playing. And then I went X2 before lunch. So I was like, well, shit, there's no way I can top here. But, you know, I'm probably going to go X5. Oh, no. But no, don't think about that. Go, no, I'm going to do my best. And I won every single game after lunch. And, you know, if my opponents had gone on to be really, really good, right? If my 2 opponents I'd lost to had gone like X1, I would have topped because their win rates would have been amazing. And the fact I lost them would have been fine. It would have been like I lost them in the last 2 rounds. So then they would have been like, yeah, cool, you get top 8. So you got it, you're top 16, you got to play. Just keep playing, keep focused, keep your cool, and just keep grinding, and you will see success eventually. That is it for this very, 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 very long video. Thank you so much for watching it, and if you enjoyed it, please do like the video. Of course, if you're seeing this on Patreon, thank you so much for your support. I really, really do appreciate it. And if you're seeing this on YouTube, please do consider checking out the Patreon. You're going to see stuff like this before tournaments. This is coming out on YouTube after tournaments, but this is going to be before. You're going to be seeing meta breakdowns and things before tournaments on my Patreon, which means you're going to have that knowledge, you're going to have this education. I really think this is a good video. I think there's a lot of good knowledge here. Let me know what you think, obviously, in the comments, if you agree, if you think this is worth it, and if you think that this is something you find valuable, please do let me know. I'm really excited for Set 2 format. I'm sick of Set 1 format now. I've played it enough. Give me Set 2. The testing starts today. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.